Mr. Doug is right here sitting with us, and you can see that our table is well decorated, man. You know, we are about to have a sip and conversation right here. A very good one.
I like that. Such cool stuff. Sip and conversation.
Sip and conversation.
Yeah, maybe that's what, Doug, maybe this is something that we can look into doing. Have a nice event called Sip and Conversation, where we sit with nice glasses of wines, bottle of wines, and we have just interesting conversations, you know. So if you're wondering who Doug Cresswell is, he's going to be sharing a bit more about himself as to what he does, where he comes from, and what we can possibly look forward to in the future in terms of the things that he will be doing. So stay tuned, I promise you, you will not regret it. The time right about now is 28 minutes past the hour 8 o'clock on a Thursday morning, the 27th of March 2025. So with no further ado, Mr. Doug, welcome. We really appreciate you taking your time to come and hang out with us and spend some time with us and get into the story of who Doug is and all the spaces that he's involved in.
Wonderful, great to be here, guys. This is a unique experience for me. Actually, when you were talking about Nonplus this morning, it was quite interesting because I mentioned to you guys just now that I was totally nonplussed by the fact that I haven't been to Soweto for about 15 years now.
Sir.
And absolutely nonplussed by the fact that I got here into Soweto at about 7:30 and there was no traffic. Because everybody's going out
Soweto,
and nobody's coming in. Awesome feeling. I actually expected to get caught in a lot of traffic, but fortunately I didn't.
Nice one.
Definitely welcome right here on the Vuga Breakfast Show, man, where it is an energetic start of the day as we promise people to give them the dose of positivity each and every time we bring guests right here. So getting right into the conversation, you are a wine connoisseur. So I am nonplussed by the way. So please take me through, what is a wine connoisseur?
I don't know who described that for me, but I'm actually not a wine connoisseur. I'm a wine lover.
I see.
I don't know enough about wine to be a connoisseur.
Regarded as a connoisseur.
But I do know enough about wine to love it and maybe be able to tell it to some people, help some people understand a little bit. So if I may just explain what we are. So when my wife and I, who come from Benoni, have loved wine for many, many years, and we have a nice wine cellar, a little bit out the ground.
I thought it was
I'm 64 years old, and that's my reminder to take my pills.
I see.
I'm sure most of you guys don't be doing that right now.
No, not yet, not just yet.
Okay, so we started. I was going to say collecting wine, but that's the wrong word. It's consuming wine. Quite a lot of wine many years ago. And over years we developed quite a nice collection of wine.
Okay.
And then we were in business together. A lot of guys who are listening to this program will know what the occupation of merchandising is.
Okay.
Which is the guys that put the products on the shelves and take orders in major retail stores like Macro and Pick n Pay and ShopRite and whatever. So we had a business doing that, and then we sold that business about 8 years ago, and very quickly I became very bored. So it was just by chance during COVID, when the first COVID came, that we had just ordered quite a lot of wine from the Western Cape to fill our wine cellar. And as it arrived, COVID came.
Wow.
So we had plenty of wine to drink, believe it. Okay. And we also obviously we had some good friends who shared some of that wine with us. And my next door neighbor and I decided to get into the business because it was just by chance that we thought, if we can get wine from the Western Cape, then we can start selling it. So about 5 or 6 years ago, we started selling wine. We got what they call a distribution license, which enables you to sell wine. And then we went and approached a very famous South African winemaker. His name is Ken Forrester. And he's based in Stellenbosch, which is one of the premium wine producing areas in the country. And he agreed very kindly to make our brand of wine, which is called Val di Terra, which means in Italian, it means Valley of the Earth.
Oh, wow.
So if you'd like me to, I'll tell you about where that comes from.
Please.
Yes, definitely.
Thanks. Guys, I've never been accused of talking too little, so you've got the right person here today, I promise.
Yeah. Give it to us.
So Ken Forrester has about a 50-hectare farm in Stellenbosch. He has been making wine for about 30 years. And he used to be a restaurateur, so he built his career on running restaurants in Johannesburg. Okay. And he did very well. And funny enough, in 1994, when everybody was so scared, well, not everybody, lots of us were scared about what was going to happen in this country. He started exiting the country and running away and building up food reserves and all sorts of stuff and water. Because they thought there was going to be pandemonium, which there wasn't. Ken Forrester, he was wise. He sold his business. He bought this farm for more than he could afford in Stellenbosch. But the guy who was there had left because just to get away. And he started a farm, and over years and years and years, he became an expert wine farmer. And today, he is known in South Africa as Mr. Shannon. Now, what does that mean? Shannon is the biggest produced wine in this country. It's the largest grown grape. It's called a Chenin Blanc.
Chenin Blanc.
Okay.
That is the wine that's produced from it. And the Chenin grape, although it's not the most drunk wine in the country, it's only about the 5th or 6th most drunk type of wine. It's still the most produced and the most wine is made from it. Any idea what happens to that other wine that's not drunk here?
No.
Come on,
no,
guys.
I'll tell you, I have.
Let's think about it.
The person who loves the wine in my family is my brother. He did try to start collecting, and he is still trying to get into the fashion and the manner of collecting. But I myself have no idea what it might be. The only thing I do know that we do have quite a vast grape, business, I guess, for lack of a better word, happening that happens in Cape Town in terms of producing wines original from South Africa. But as to the effect that the different wines has or what kinds of grapes that they come from, I tell you, I have no idea whatsoever. So that's why we have someone like you to try and shed some light and educate us. You know?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Great. So, there's a hell of a lot of education in South Africa that's got to happen. Basically, one of the things that one needs to learn is what type of different grapes are available, and the basic knowledge of how wine is made. But in principle, there are about a lot of people that are listening to even the show would have heard of different types of wines. So in the red ranges, you get products called Cabernet Sauvignon, which Mo's got one over there.
Okay.
Then we have another product called a Pinotage, which is a special relationship with South Africa, and I'll explain that just now. And then there's a Merlot, which is the most popular red wine in the country.
Merlot.
Merlot, yeah.
That's where a lot of people would have heard of this Merlot. Okay? But there's lots of other red wines. There's also Shiraz. There's a product called Pinot Noir. There's a lot of different ones, but the most common ones are the ones that I've just mentioned now. You also then get white wines. The most popular one is called a Sauvignon Blanc, which you may have heard of.
Sauvignon Blanc.
And then the one that that is the biggest produced here is called Chenin Blanc. And the reason that it's not the most drunk here and they make the most grapes here is because it has the best conditions, some of the best conditions in the world to grow Chenin Blanc in the Western Cape. And they use all of the excess wine to export. So it's one of the most exported types of wines
from South Africa.
From South Africa.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, where Ken Forrester, who makes our wine, is extremely famous, is that every year there are World Wine Awards. Okay? And very occasionally, maybe once every 2 or 3 years, a South African will win a world award, for the best type of wine. So you might get somebody who wins the best Cabernet Sauvignon, or the best Shiraz, or the best Merlot, or the best Chenin. So a couple of years ago, in fact, I think it was last year, Ken Forrester won the World Chenin of the Year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this Chenin Blanc, we also sell a Chenin Blanc. I didn't bring any whites today.
Okay.
Because it's just too much to go through.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine.
So we only bought red wines today. But that's the claim to fame of Ken Forrester. And he doesn't only produce Chenin, he also produces other very good wine, red types of wines, whites, and then the ladies' favorites, which is a rosé.
Yes.
Rosé.
Sweet rosé.
Everybody knows rosé.
Yes.
Now, the funny thing about rosé is that rosé is actually the biggest growing by percentage consumed wine in the world at the moment.
Wow.
And that's a lot of people who drink rosé like it, especially the ladies, because they perceive that it is sweet.
Yes.
And that's the issue of education in South Africa, is that the more that we learn about wine, the more that we learn that it's not just about drinking sweet wine. It's about much more dry wine than sweet wine is sold in this country and across the spectrum of the world. So, and that's because you have to grow into wine. You know, it's like anything. Who drinks beer here?
Yeah. I'm a non-consumer.
I mean,
You're a non-consumer.
I've had
a beer or two.
Yeah, you know, upon occasion, yeah.
Okay. So it's like smoking. If you've ever smoked or you had your first beer, the first time you taste it, you think,
this is not
terrible.
it. Yeah,
Why do people drink
definitely,
this?
yes.
Right? But the actual reality is that the more that you drink it, the more your palate becomes accustomed to it.
Yes.
Same as smoking. The more that you smoke, the more
your
that your
lungs
lungs get adapted to it.
Yeah.
And then what was something that you didn't like in the beginning becomes a habit.
Yes.
And then you don't stop drinking it because you can't, or you don't stop smoking it because it's difficult.
Yeah.
The same actually happens with wine, and we're not asking people to become addicted to wine, but in order to understand the qualities of wine and to get to like it, you have to drink it. And what happens often is that people pick up a bottle of red, dry wine, and the first time they taste it, they think, oh, this is so dry. This is terrible. I don't like it. Okay?
Yeah.
But once you get down to actually drinking it on a fairly regular basis, and when you get the tastes and you learn about the wine, what actually happens is you get into a space where you'll never stop drinking it.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
But lots of people start on sweet wine because it's easier to drink.
Yes, it's easy on the palate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So today, what one of the purposes is to help people understand a little bit more about wine and what the different wines are about.
Yeah.
And also perhaps the difference a little bit between sweet and the dry concept. We're not saying that sweet wine is not nice. We're just saying that there's a lot more. Only about maybe 5% of all wine in South Africa drunk is actually sweet.
Wow. Very, very interesting. Very interesting.
So the question that I want to ask, as you mentioned that, South Africa, when it comes to, awards of winning, the best wine.
Yes.
So I want to know what makes the best wine.
Okay, look, it's a combination of factors. So one thing is that you've got to have the right weather conditions.
Okay.
So what makes a wine in total is it puts you in the direction of what makes the best wine. So first of all, where the wine is grown, South Africa has ideal growing conditions in the Western Cape. Okay. So the conditions there's wind that comes off the sea, the soil is the right condition. They have what they call a Mediterranean climate where it rains mostly in winter and not in summer.
Oh, really?
And grapes like that, yeah. Now, why do they call it a Mediterranean climate? Because South Africa's climate is very, very similar to the Mediterranean region at the top of Africa. So the areas like Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, those areas, and Morocco, they're all in the Mediterranean. And that's where, in fact, North Africa, the first grapes that were ever grown, that ever in the world, were there. Okay. And we never had grapes in South Africa until 600 years ago when the Dutch first got here. And the Portuguese.
Wow.
Okay.
All right.
So what happened is that they brought grape seeds here and they started growing them and they grew very well. And what then happened is that they started focusing a lot of attention on wine. So actually, even though wine has been grown and consumed for about 10,000 years. And South Africa has only been producing now for 600 years. We are still one of the longest producing wine countries in the world. Yes,
Wow.
okay.
Wow.
So there's weather conditions. The second thing is the quality of the vines and the grapes. So the older the vines, okay. So vines are what the grapes grow on, okay. They are basically shrubs or trees, and over a period of time, if you start picking the grapes after a year or two, the grapes are very young. They don't have a lot of sugar in them. And sugar, even though we get dry wine, there's a lot of sugar in here. You just don't taste it.
Really?
Because alcohol is sugar. Okay? So the more the alcohol content inside the grape, the better the quality of the wine generally, or the more the sugar content rather. Also, another massive factor is that wine is produced. Sorry about
No
that.
worries.
Should have turned this off. So wine is produced in. Excuse me.
No worries.
So wine is produced in South Africa or anywhere. It's produced on the basis of worldwide. Probably 90% of all wine now is not produced in what they call oak barrels. So when you see wine on programs, documentaries, or what have you, and
they're
at wine
always in
farms,
those big, those big barrels.
okay?
Yeah.
That's not where most wine comes from. It comes from big stainless steel tanks, sometimes 2,000 liters up to 100,000 liters. These are massive
Are
tanks.
those tanks where they spin like this inside?
Then some of them can spin inside, etc., to swirl the wine.
Yes.
Now that's the most commercial wine. So in other words, the cheaper wines are generally produced in that, and that's where most of the consumption in the world comes through.
Okay.
So even though the wine can be very good from those stainless steel tanks because the technology has become so much better, okay, what actually happens is that the best wine is still produced in oak barrels.
Oh, wow.
Now an oak barrel, one of those oak barrels that you see wine going into, they are all imported in South Africa. They come from Europe, okay, most of them, and they're very expensive. One of those barrels is about 27,000 Rand.
Wow.
Now, the winemakers that produce the wine, the first, you can use an oak barrel about 6 or 7 times. In other words, you make wine in it once, you take the wine out, then you can use it again. And every time you use it, the oak flavoring goes into the wine. The more you use the oak barrel, the less the flavor of the oak or the effect of the oak that goes into the wine.
So is this now where the age comes in terms of how long the wine has been stored in the
factor.
I see. So it is an actual thing that the longer it stayed in the barrel, the more expensive it becomes because the flavor and the quality improves over time.
It is generally true, but that also is not necessarily true because it also depends on the grapes that you put in there. Some grapes are not attuned to staying in wine barrels for a long time. So it's the quality of the grape. So in other words, for example, if you wanted a great quality wine, you take an old vine, say 10 years old, you take the grape from that, you then ferment it, you crush it, you take the juice out, you put it in the barrel. This is very simple. And then you manage it. And you might blend it with other wines or other grapes to get a good flavor. You might leave it in there a hell of a long time. You might move it out of there for a bit, put it in a stainless steel tank, and then move it back. There's lots of different processes. This is why it's such a technology of the winemakers to make wine. And then it's also the flair of the winemaker, because the winemaker is also looking for a wine that tastes great. So if he takes the wine out a week before, it might take quite different to a week later.
Oh, I see.
So his palate has got to be attuned to the general population or to the people who are judging wine. So there's lots of different factors.
But are there now other things that someone who creates wines and that wants to make their own brand, are there other ingredients that go in other than grapes and storing it in those big tanks like you just mentioned, or the barrels? Are there other things like, do you add in like a splash of alcohol in there? Do you add in, I don't know, flavors in there, or I don't know, preservatives or things of that? Okay.
The cheaper wine, you might find that cheaper wines, they have flavorants in them, or some wines that are maybe a little bit more expensive, they put zest in there, they might put some fruits in there just to get a tinge of a flavor. Like you might put chocolate in there sometimes.
Oh, yes.
To get a little bit of a chocolate feel or taste. But generally, the profile is the grape. So if you are making wine, there are other components. Some sulfites are another thing. It's a chemical that goes in there. It makes the wine last for a longer time. So there are various chemicals that can go in, but generally speaking, it is about the grape and the quality of the grape and the type of the grape. And that's another thing. As a world-leading or a top-quality wine is not necessarily and by no means is always the most expensive wine. You can get the wine that won the World Chenin of the Year from Ken Forrester retails for about 140 Rand a bottle. Now that sounds like a lot of money, but it actually isn't, because the average price of good wine in this country, if you buy it from a good wine, I'm talking per bottle, if you buy it from a bottle store, is generally about good wine, 100 Rand a bottle. But you can easily buy wines like Meerlust, which is a very famous brand in South Africa. That wine can be 2 or 3 years old and it's 500 or 600 Rand a bottle. But that wine won't necessarily win a world award.
Why is that?
So it's value for money. In other words, it's the way they judge it is they say that wine sells for this price, and at that price, in comparison to all the other wines at that sort of price level, what does it taste like? How long does it last? All that, and they say, okay, so this wine, which costs 150 Rand a bottle, is great value for money against a wine that costs 600, because even though the 600 Rand bottle may be better, it's only a little bit better. It's maybe not worth an extra 450 Rand. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, I see.
So
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. So now, very interesting, Mo, because, we've consumed, I personally, like I mentioned, that I'm someone who watches a whole lot of movies and a whole lot of TV, right? And we've seen that, and you just touched on it and mentioned it, that there's technology now, as the world has evolved and technology has evolved. The style of producing wine has also evolved,
Definitely.
right? So now, how would you differentiate between old world wines and the new world wines that you guys are consuming and producing these nowadays, especially with the technological influences that have come in now? Like what would you say is the difference between a wine that was made, I don't know, 100 years ago, perhaps, versus a wine that's produced 3 years ago?
Yeah. Okay, like you're saying, there's a hell of a lot of technology changes.
Yeah.
So 100 years ago, first of all, there were no stainless steel tanks.
Yeah.
Okay. So stainless steel tanks, if my memory is correct, started being used perhaps about 50 years ago. Okay. And when they were first used, the quality of the wine that was not great. Okay. It was like imagine taking the classic method of going in oak barrels and now no flavor going in there. It's going straight into a stainless steel tank. So how do they make it more saleable and better tasting? So over time and very quickly, because technology caught up quickly. In fact, it was longer than 50 years ago. But very quickly, technology caught up. So they started doing things like, for example, a Cabernet Sauvignon, often people think it's a very woody wine. In other words, it tastes a lot like wood. You've got the Cab Sauv there. It's not always woody, but often people
tend to think
it's one of the characteristics of a lot of Cabernet Sauvignons.
Yeah.
But that was always produced in
stainless steel.
No, in oak barrels.
Oak, okay.
Everything was produced in oak barrels. Now, when they changed to stainless steel, it's the same grape, but it didn't have that woody flavor, so it wasn't as popular. So you know what they did? They took very old barrels that had gone beyond their use, and they shaved off the
inside.
The inside of it.
The wood. With the lathe. Okay, and they put those bits, those shavings, into the stainless steel barrels. Okay, so that it started getting a flavor.
That flavor. Oh, I see.
Now, because also the stainless steel tanks are much bigger, and you can produce a lot more. The cost of the wine came down a lot. Okay. So good quality wines were no longer that expensive. Okay? So the cost came down, and they also started technology in terms of I'm not a technical person, but they started evolving very quickly with, like you're saying, the spinning of the wine. You know, that wasn't in the beginning. They didn't have those mixers up in those stainless steel tanks. Temperature gauges, temperature monitoring, all that kind of stuff evolved. So now, whereas you normally, a stainless steel produced red wine, you could maybe only keep it for in the beginning for 2 years.
Okay.
Today you can keep it the same wine for 5 years.
5 years.
Because the quality of the process is a lot better. Old world and new world. So an interesting thing, talk about old world and new world. So the oldest commercially available wine, the one that was drunk, in fact, in the days of the Egyptians, was Cabernet Sauvignon. Okay. So that's one of the oldest wines available.
Still around.
It's still around, and it's the world's biggest consumed wine. So that is, more people drink Cabernet Sauvignon than any other wine in the world. Now, bear in mind, this is a type of wine. It's not a brand of wine. The brand is Val de Terre or Ken Forrester or Canoncop or Durbanville Hills or Cadet, or there's lots of different brands. Pandora's Box. Those are the brands, the names of the companies that produce them, or the wine farms. The type of wine, it's either the type or the varietal of wine, it's another word for it, is Cabernet Sauvignon. That's the type of grape. Merlot is a type of grape.
So
Pinotage is a type of
grape. Do they
grape.
differ from the kinds of grapes that they're produced from, or is it about where the grape comes from, where you'd find, or rather, would a Merlot differ? A South African Merlot, would it differ from an Italian Merlot because of the grapes? Is it
It's a very good question.
Yeah.
So you don't know anything about wine. Why are you answering these questions?
Shocking.
This is all from things I've seen and watched and heard. Yeah.
No, it's entirely, absolutely correct.
Yeah.
The conditions that exist in the area that the wine is grown, and bear in mind, when I'm talking about simple things, for example, if a wine farm in South Africa is on the coast, okay, you get a lot of dry sea air coming in.
Yes.
That affects the vines, okay? Because the salt gets into the leaves and into the grapes, okay? So that's one factor that affects it. The other factor is what they think a thing called a terroir. Terroir, okay? Now, terroir is the conditions that affect the production of, it's a French word, actually loosely translated, it means terrorist. Okay. Now, why do they call it terrorist? Because a terrorist is an infiltrator. Something that comes in unwanted. Okay. Or it wasn't originally destined to be there. Okay. So it infiltrates. So that's what happens. If you've got ground that you grow the grapes in, that 100,000 years ago used to be grassland. Okay, that's what's in the soil inherently. Okay, but if it was a forest 100,000 years ago and it was full of pines, okay, and now it's all farmland, that is in the soil. Okay? So it affects the taste and the quality of the wine. Okay, so and there's also, if the wine farm is in a valley and it's protected from the conditions. Or there's a lot of water that comes down from the sides, so that it has a lot of water. You generally would find that those wines taste different to an area where there's not a lot of water. So, for example, you guys might have remembered that there was this very serious drought in the Western Cape about 10 years ago. In fact, in 2015 was the peak of the drought, 2015, 2016. When there's a drought, a lot of things die, obviously. So a lot of vines did die, but the ones that survived are the strong ones. And those, they're particularly strong, and they draw more from the soil, and the grapes become sweeter, because they're drawing more sugar. And the more the sugar, the better the quality of the grape generally. So the wines that were produced in 2015, 2016 in South Africa are some of the best wines that have ever been produced.
About 10 years ago.
10 years ago, okay? So also going forward, because the drought didn't just end then. That was when its peak was. And why was it? Was because there wasn't any water. But doesn't mean that it was good for South African wine industry, because a lot of vines were lost.
Did die,
But the quality of the wine, some of that wine that you buy today, is 3 times more expensive than even the next 2 or 3 years after
Years
that.
after. Wow. Definitely,
It's a
man.
lot.
Very, very
Interesting.
It is. It's so interesting.
So
it is.
when we go to YouTube, man, because obviously people watching here, they have questions.
Yes.
Right now, okay, let us go to the questions. I have a question from Banele Mli saying, does wine really have a health benefits? Not too much, but just a glass a day.
Definitely. And what they say, and look, obviously we sell wine, we're going to tell you that. Okay? So no, it's a fact, especially red wine.
Yeah.
White wine is not bad for you. It's also good for you in limited quantities. A wine, they say a glass of wine a day keeps the doctor away.
Yeah.
So it has very good qualities, got a lot of nutrients. It does have sugar in it, but not excessive sugar. And also the fruits that they come from. Grape, any fruit is good for you.
It's good for, yeah.
But this is condensed. So yes, it's very good for you. And you should, then again, it's also high alcohol content. And incidentally, often the longer you keep the wine, the grapes in the barrel, etc., gives it a higher alcohol content. Sometimes the more the sugar in the grape gives it a higher content.
Okay.
But on average, the alcohol content of a good red wine is about 13%. Okay. And if you take beer, it's about 5%. Okay. And if you take whiskey, that's about 30%.
Wow.
Brandy. Okay?
Really?
Okay.
Yeah. That's why you only drink whiskey in small quantities.
I see.
And brandy.
And
okay?
not
30,
fill up the
35.
entire glass. Yeah.
And gin is 43%.
Wait,
Okay,
guys.
so that's very high. But wine, you can have a couple of in fact, look, a lot of people in South Africa, people who've drunk wine for a long time, believe you me, they drink up to a bottle a day.
Yeah.
And those are normal people.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that's good. All I'm saying is that
I see you.
it's not bad for you if you're having a bottle.
But what are the health benefits of drinking
Having a
wine?
glass or two a day at the end of the day.
You know, it's got vitamins and minerals. So any vitamins and minerals are good for you. So if you drink it in decent quantities, like they always say, anything in moderation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Does bottled wine also mature further after it has been bottled? I ask because the more mature, the more expensive.
Not generally. That is a perception that is most people have, that the more mature, the more expensive. But in reality, if you go and buy a 50 Rand bottle of wine today, okay, and that wine is generally not built to last. Okay. If you keep that wine for more than 4 or 5 years and you open it up, guess what happens to it?
Is it bad? It would have gone bad.
Turns to vinegar. Okay, I'm not joking, because the byproduct, the next product beyond wine, or one of the next products.
Yeah.
No worries, don't worry. You're good, don't worry.
It's expected.
You're good.
Expected,
It happened.
but yeah.
I finally got
There we
it off.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But wine, and that is made in stainless steel tanks. So the quality of the wine is not as good. It won't last as long. The more expensive wine that you see that matures is made to last. So it generally is in an oak barrel. It has qualities that allow it to keep lasting a long time. And the reason that wine is more expensive, because it takes longer to make. Okay. The process is a lot different. And it sometimes does age. So as it ages, it becomes more expensive.
Yeah.
So you can buy a bottle of wine for, say today, 150 Rand, and you research it a little bit, you Google it, and you say, how long will this wine last? Or it sometimes says on the back of the bottle, and it'll say it'll last another 10 years, okay? That doesn't mean that it's necessarily the right time to drink it. It might say you can drink it now, but it will last you 10 years, or it might say you can drink it in 2 years' time, and then it will still last you another 8 years. But that wine often will increase in price, because the longer it lasts, the better it tastes. But that wine is made to last. It doesn't mean that every wine is made to last.
So, but then does it also mean that there are other expensive brands and types of wines that aren't, they might be expensive, but they aren't necessarily made and produced to last longer? You need to, it does it mean that?
Yeah, there's a lot about marketing as well. It's the same as a lot of products, you know. So there are, I'm not mentioning names, but there are some very big brands out there, okay? And we can tell you categorically, for example, that our wine, at the retail prices that these sell at, our wine in comparison to equivalent wines, is about 30% less expensive, but the quality of the wine is identical. So why? Not identical, it's not the same
but more
wine.
or
More or less the same. But why is it so much more expensive? Well, those guys market their brand. They spend millions and billions on marketing. It all has to go into the price of the brand.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean to say that those wines are not good. They're just more expensive. So that's another reason that wine's more expensive. The other thing is you've got to bear in mind, as a general rule, guys, please listen to this. This is so important. Red wine, as a general rule, if you're paying, generally speaking, anywhere between 40 Rand and about 70 Rand for a bottle of red wine, that wine, if it's made, don't buy it if it's very old, okay? In other words, not more than 2 years old,
Okay.
Maybe 3, depending on the product, but let's say maximum 3. That wine is not going to last you, generally speaking, for more than 2 or 3 years,
Wow.
okay? After that, it will go to vinegar.
goes bad.
Okay, the cork starts to seep, all sorts of stuff.
I've seen that.
Because it's also the quality of the corks that they put in there.
Wow.
You see, that dictates the price of the wine as well. So there's different types of corks and different types of closures. They're not just corks. Some of them are synthetic. They look like corks, but they're not corks. Okay. In fact, these that are in here are not corks. Okay. Anyway, that's another subject.
Wow.
The issue is that white wine is different. White wine doesn't last as long. So when you open that 40 or 50 Rand bottle of white wine, you've got to drink that wine within 3 or 4, maybe a week maximum. You could put it in the fridge. And always wine, when you open it, whether it be red or white, it'll last you longer once you've opened it if you put it back in the fridge. Rosé is the same as white. It doesn't last long once you've opened it. So you often don't find that you buy very old white or rosé wine. The wine doesn't last as long.
Wow. Very, very interesting. And then again on YouTube, KTTUZ Ogletak says, please ask Mr. Cresswell, how hard is it to get into the wine business? And do you as the owner need to have the wine knowledge before getting into the business, or can you just hire a pro and wing it? I mean, if I have like 6 million lying around, and I want to get in touch with someone like Mr. Forrester. Yeah, should I be someone who's well versed in the spaces of wine producing and winemakery, or can I just call Mr. Cresswell, who's been consuming wine for a while, and say, look, man, I have 6 million lying around. Let's see if we can get into the business.
Yeah. So it's an interesting question and somewhat difficult to answer, because the biggest thing about the wine industry is that the wine industry has struggled. Okay. And it's struggled partially to do with the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
But it's also struggled because, frankly, and it's a double-edged question, it's really interesting. If more people drank wine in South Africa, there would be a much bigger opportunity. The problem is that the majority of the population doesn't yet drink wine.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's a limited situation. And another problem is that younger people today of my ilk, so of my demographic, white, let's be specific. Okay? Younger people. And I can't comment on your demographic because I don't live it.
Sure.
But younger people, I'm talking about in their 20s and their 30s today, of our ilk, and they only represent probably maybe 10% of the potential buying population for wine. Okay, the younger people, for example, when they go to wine festivals today, it's the older people that are buying in cases and are buying different varieties of wine. The younger people are buying in bottles. So I think it's partially health-wise issues.
Okay.
I think it's partially to do also with the economic situation. It's not affordable to buy a lot of wine. Now, and the last issue, which is the most challenging, is that if there was a lot more education in the demographics that don't drink as much wine, this industry would explode. It would explode. We need to get more people drinking wine. So the answer to the first part of the question is, if I had 6 million Rand, would I get into the wine industry? No.
As someone so what he's asking is that, as someone who's not versed and knowledgeable about the wine business and the wine spaces, is it advisable for me to say I have 6 million lying around, but I'm not knowledgeable whatsoever, but I want to get into the business? Can I wing it and call in someone who's well versed like yourself and Mr. Forrest and say, look, man, please run this for me. I'll stay behind the scenes, but from time to time,
there are plenty of companies that do that.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people that do it. The key is to find the way, and this is why for us this is a unique opportunity to talk to this demographic of people, because if we can just educate, if you guys were able to get through social media, etc., you can get involved in companies like us. But I would say it's limited, and the reason that I'm saying that is because we don't understand your demographic. Okay? So we can educate you in terms of wine. We can tell you, and it's not difficult to learn one. I'm not a connoisseur, as I've said to you. I've winged it. I've just learned it because I love selling. That's my game. That's what I've done all my life. If you can sell and you can interact with people and you can socialize and you're an entertainer to an extent, okay, where you've got a group of people that you can network with. It's a massive opportunity. Massive. The key element is to start getting people to drink wine. So doing tastings, opening up. I mean, somebody one day must open up a wine tasting room in Soweto. Somebody must do it.
Because I was about to ask, so if to get more, young people to drink wine, how do we do that? Because yes, we can speak it, to the ears of the people so that they can hear. But now, it's the how that we need to ask. So, as you mentioning the wine festivals, so how does those, events go about?
Interesting. We specialize now in wine festivals. We have one called Ben Vino. We've only done, it's our third one now, which we're going to be running with in cooperation with Empress Palace near the airport on Saturday, the 5th of April. There we invite 25 odd different farms. They all come into this massive venue called the Roman Shed at the Empress Palace. It's huge. They set themselves up. They bring their sample wines. People pay a ticket price of 275 Rand. For that, they get a tasting glass. They come in and they go and they walk and they taste as many wines as they want to. But bear in mind, you only get to about 10 wines in your pocha. Okay, so you got to be careful.
As to how much you consume. 200
different wines.
Exactly, I can imagine.
So you got to be careful. So the idea is that's what promotes wine. Is you got to run those sorts of things. But I think there's a step before that, and that is one has got to get people into drinking wine. And festivals are one way to do that.
Okay.
But it's got to start at grassroots. It's got to start at, when you go out and you buy a bottle of wine. I keep on turning this thing off and it just won't go off. So
don't worry about it. You're good.
What happens is that at grassroots, like I mentioned to you earlier on, people drink sweet wine because they like the taste of it. Okay. You've got to change that trend. So the first way to change it is that when you have people around for a dinner or a social or braai, okay, go out and buy some dry white wine. Go out and buy a bottle of dry red wine, okay, and get people to start sipping it. The first time they take it, they'll say, I can't
that's what I do.
Okay, you can't
in more than most cases.
But then you also be clever because what you do is you prepare the right food with it. So, for example, red wine generally is very well drunken with red meat. Okay? No, not only with red meat, but if you're doing a braai and you're doing wors and some steaks on there or something, or you're doing a roast, okay, go out and buy, the easiest drinking one is Merlot. Okay? It's the smoothest, even though it's dry. So you go and buy a bottle of Merlot. Don't spend, guys, I know it's a price and issue, but rather buy one bottle for 80 Rand than 2 bottles for 40 Rand. Okay. Because what you'll do is you're giving those people the 40 Rand bottle and they're going to hate it. They're going to hate it. Because if it's their first taste, it's not good. And those things have a place. Once you get into wine, you can actually then start drinking cheaper wine. But when you've got a bottle of 80 Rand wine and you give everybody a little sip, maybe pour half a glass of wine for them and let them drink it slowly with their food,
you
start getting the whole taste going. And now you have you have a bottle of white, you make it chilled because it's got to be cold.
Yeah.
A bottle of white, dry wine, probably a Sauvignon Blanc is what I'd start with because that's the most popular white wine. Sauvignon Blanc, and when you have something sweet with that, like a pudding or even your snacks in the beginning.
Yes.
You've got some crisps and you've got some peanuts and whatever then you have a glass of that. And you drink it at the same time as you're eating. And the more that you do that yourself, if you want to get into wine, the more you enjoy it and the more you want to try other wines.
Yes.
And the more you're prepared to spend on wine other than spending it on other things like beer, etc. The difference between drinking a wine and a beer, for example, even in my case, I drink wine, beer, and whiskey.
Okay.
I drink them all. Okay?
Yeah.
Because I like them all. Okay. But the difference with wine is that wine is far more refreshing, even if it's red. Okay. And it goes much better with food. And what do? Mostly when we entertain, we eat food and we drink.
And we drink,
okay?
Yeah.
If you're going to a soccer match or something, don't take a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Take your beer, okay? So when you're eating and you're socializing, you do that. And answer that question once again, to get into the business of this industry, I personally wouldn't take my money now and invest in it because I'm in the wrong demographic. But like, for example, for the first time in our short history of 3 major events over the last year, where there's between 500 and 800 people, and this one likely to be 1,000 odd people, for the first time we've got 3 black farms. Okay?
Oh, wow.
So, and the one is Nanola, the other one is Coin, and there's another one called Sesfikile. Okay? They're being represented there. And these are people who understand wine already. One of the participants is already in the wine business, is buying wine and sourcing wine from the Western Cape.
Wow.
One of them is making their own wine and blending it. They don't actually own the farms, except one, Coin, is a farm, but it's actually a jointly owned farm, but all of their sales representatives now are black.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, such cool
it's
stuff.
wonderful.
Yeah.
They're trying to penetrate the market, and they have to start by penetrating our demographic.
Yeah.
But it's going to evolve. You watch this in the next 5 years. I get goosebumps about this. There's going to be a wine festival in Soweto.
Definitely.
Yes,
14
definitely.
minutes past 9, still in conversation with Doug Cresswell, a wine lover. Yes, there are questions that I am seeing on YouTube. Keep those comments coming because we're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, we're going to conclude, and Mr. Doug will tell us more about the Benvino Wine Festival. But before we do that and give you your you go to the break. We can see there the celebrations are starting to.
Of course, it's 5 p.m. somewhere in the world.
Yeah, man. Sip and conversation right here. Everybody is getting a glass in studio, and of course, if you want to find yourself here, man, yes, serve those people. Oh, there we go.
There we go. Yes, sir. Thank you.
I thought I was gonna drink this whole bottle by myself, but I can see that I am served. Yeah.
So Mo, I want, because Doug is going to be having an event this coming weekend. But before we get to that, let's talk about now, because you just mentioned that it's always recommended to have these wines with or pair it with the necessary food that goes well with it, right? So let's talk about the bottle that you just opened up now, and also, why is it so important to pair food with the type of food with the type of wine that it goes well with? Why is that so important?
It's important because it's not specifically made to go with that food, but it's just ironic that what's happened is that a lot of food is made with fruits. A lot of food is prepared with fruits. A lot of essences that go into food are fruit-based. This is a fruit-based product, obviously.
Yeah.
So what the idea is that over time, people were eating and they were drinking wine, and they suddenly started to say, well, this particular grape suits that particular taste. It's not specifically designed for that. It's just the way that it's evolved. So Merlot, for example, which is what we're drinking, and it's the most smooth, it's the most popular wine in South Africa. Merlot in South Africa.
Okay.
The world's most popular is Cabernet Sauvignon.
Sauvignon Blanc, like you mentioned.
The world's biggest growth, as I mentioned, is Rosé. Okay, but Merlot is slightly more popular in South Africa than Cab Sav. So when you're drinking Merlot, what this should be paired with is a nice steak, or beef, any other beef, a beef roast,
chicken.
Okay.
Chicken you can, but it's not specifically white meat and fish. You generally would, and this is my preference, you would generally drink it with a pinotage. Okay. But Merlot also goes well. It's a matter of taste, because if you start drinking in the beginning, you're going to not make any difference to you. Okay? So what we do is we cheers it.
We cheers, absolutely. There you go, Mo. Yes, sir.
Now, when you drink this, please, it's very important you swirl it all around your mouth when you're doing a tasting. Don't just swallow it, or because you've got different taste buds in your mouth that taste different things. So you've got some areas that taste bitter, some sour, some sweet. If you swirl it and then you swallow it, it'll also sink into your tongue. So then you'll be able to taste the real taste. And when you first do it, it's not going to taste great, but wait for a couple of minutes.
So do we do that? I've seen that people do this. Yeah, swirl it around in the glass.
That's a habit.
Yeah.
There's a little thing that comes up here. You'll see some oils on the side. Okay.
Oh.
You see that?
Yeah.
If you look up to the light, you'll see some oils. That's oils inside, and that is called the legs of wine.
The legs
of wine.
Happens with red wine, and the more legs you have in red wine, the more of those streaks that come down, the better the quality of the wine. Okay, so we're going to take it, and we're going to take a big healthy sip, not one like that.
A big healthy sip.
Woo! That's a big one. Okay.
Go, Mo. You don't drink, Charlie. You got to taste it. You invited me here. You must go for it now.
I have to taste it.
Yes.
So I want to understand how does the tasting goes, because I've seen people spitting, right?
Yes.
So why do they do that? Is it part of tasting, or tasting is drinking?
If you're doing a proper tasting, and I'm not a tasting drinking, okay? The proper tasting where you're sampling a lot of wines and all you're interested in is the taste. Then you spit it out. And you spit it out into a thing called a spittoon. You swirl it, let some of the alcohol. That means also you can taste a lot more. You could do 100 wines doing that. This way, if you're drinking it like this, you're going to do
and swallowing it.
4 wines.
You'll get to 10, like you mentioned, because there's like 200 brands and styles and types of wines that are there.
95%, 99% of all people who taste wines at tasting events, whether it be a tasting in a restaurant, or a tasting at a festival, they don't do a tasting, they do a drinking. Which is like this. So that's how much you should, because you don't drink, but you are going to have. You don't.
But I don't have a spittoon. What is it called?
A spittoon.
A little cup or something.
Can I get a cup, man? Because I'm gonna fall here.
A spittoon.
Okay, so there's my spittoon. So it's in spittoon. Right. So what I need to do is to drink and
swirl it around.
All around.
Swirl it around, right?
Up and down. You pucker up like that. Your mouth also goes a little bit dry. That is the thing that makes your mouth dry, is a thing in all red wine called tannins. Makes you go like this. And those tannins are particularly tasteable in Cabernet Sauvignon, which is one of the strongest wines.
Is it the bottle that he has there?
No, that's the bottle that Mo has there. Merlot has tannins, but not as strong. So that's why it's much smoother. Now you can spit it out.
Mo is so uncomfortable, guys. Mo is not a consumer of alcohol, and so every time maybe we're hanging out and we have to get him like a nice cool drink or a juice or things of that sort, because he's not a consumer.
I felt like I just consumed the sanitizer.
So, but let me. When you do this, and the people who are well versed will tell you about the colors and the oils, like you mentioned there, but there's something that they also mentioned, like letting the wine breathe.
True.
What is that? What is meant when we say we let the wine breathe for a while?
Okay, so it is true that when wine is opened, providing that you don't wait too long, the more oxygen it gets into it, the better that it tastes. It will actually taste smoother. It becomes what they call oxygenated. But the funny thing is that oxygen is both the best friend and the worst enemy of wine. Okay? So why do I say that? So if you cork or put a cap on a bottle of wine, okay, and you don't extract all the oxygen, it will go off very quickly. So the idea is to create a vacuum when you bottle the wine, okay? Because if oxygen is in there, it over time it reacts with the components of the wine, the yeast, etc., and it will go rotten quickly. Okay, that's why if you can't just open a bottle of wine and leave it open, you've got to put the cap back on. Okay, and it won't still last because now even you opening it, you've let oxygen
inside. Yes.
Now that's the one thing, you have to close the bottle, and you can't leave it there for that long.
Yeah.
It's the best friend of wine because once you open it and you oxygenate it, and the best way to oxygenate it is actually, you'll see people just leaving the bottle open, okay? If you're going to drink it the same night, like we leave the bottle open like that, that's one way to oxygenate it, but you're not getting a lot of oxygen in it when you first, it's just that little surface there, you know?
Yeah.
So how you oxygenate is you generally should do what they call decanting the wine. You can buy decanters. They're just fancy glass things, glass bottles. You get them in liquor stores and you get them in Checkers and whatever. But you don't even have to do that. You can take a jug and you can pour the whole bottle out into a jug, nice water jug, in a glass one or whatever.
Store it.
The more you pour it, the more oxygenated it gets. Leave it for half an hour, red wine.
Yeah.
And then drink it after that. If you've got time, don't always open the red wine and drink it straight away.
Do you put it back in from the jug?
No, you can if you want. But just generally speaking, just pour it from the wine.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Right,
Very
Mr.
interesting.
Doug.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do right now is after we have, come back from the break, we're going to read some of the comments and we get into the wine festival, right? So before I do that, it's 24 minutes past 9 and still watching the Vuga Breakfast Show. So here is your following traffic if you are on the road right now. There's a lane closure on the N1 southbound near the Flying Saucer ramp due to ongoing rehabilitation work on a sinkhole. The number of lanes has been reduced from 4 to 3. And there's also a stationary vehicle on the N1 southbound just after Malibongwe Driver R512. The emergency lane on the ramp from Malibongwe is currently closed. There is a heavy congestion on the N1 southbound at Winnie Mandela Drive, ramp leading to Winnie Mandela Drive on R511. There's also congestion on the N3 northbound just after Gililuli interchange, affecting the ramp from the Linksfield Road M16. There's a stationary vehicle on the N1 southbound at Deep Kloof interchange ramp leading to Renshaw Road M79. The emergency lane is currently closed in that area. There is a congestion on the N1 northbound just after Golden Highway leading to the R553. Motorists should anticipate delays and consider alternative routes if possible. Right now, let's take a short break and prepare you with your weather update while we go and sip some wine.
with the VUGA team as time is spent
at the Vision Board and Pizza event out at Curiosity in Maboning,
aimed at promoting positivity, creativity that breeds longevity.
Enjoy tasks like silent reading,
vision boarding, and live performances.
VUGA Breakfast Show brings you all things great and amazing with Sacred Sundays
in collaboration with Mwari Pizza for Vision Board and Pizza.
28 minutes past 9, it is the time, and you're still watching the VUGA Breakfast Show. And to remind you, we are on the social media platforms. Starting with X is at VUGA Daily, YouTube is VUGA Breakfast Show, Facebook it's a VUGA Breakfast Show, and also on TikTok it's a VUGA Breakfast Show. Still in conversation with Mr. Doug Cresswell,
yes,
our wine lover right here in the studio. So before the break, I promised that I'm going to go through some of the comments because people are still asking questions right here. So so when I read here, I think there was a comment from Kiamogeti. She wants you to leave a bottle of wine.
Yes.
I saw that one.
Yeah.
I'm going
Yes.
to leave a bottle of wine.
Yeah, and then we have Yandim Cox, obviously celebrating Sanelisi Mgoduga's birthday with a
your
bottle
wine
of
Hey,
wine.
happy
Definitely,
birthday.
she's coming
Well done,
up
happy birthday.
after here. Okay, I switched off my thing. Thanks for reminding me,
Yes,
man.
yes, sir.
Yeah, celebrations, man. Of course, they're going to start. They have already started because Mr. Doug will take us through the festival that we can go to.
Yeah,
right?
it's coming up. Yeah.
And then Nelly Swarasi Vugile, hashtag VUGA Breakfast Show. Let's drink and get healthy. Happy Puza Thursday. And then Gamokhetu says, at Mo, you drink wine. How? No, man. If it's my job, I don't drink. It's not considered drinking when I'm at work.
Yes.
Right? And then we have Zinzi Elizabeth. All my life, I've been drinking wine incorrectly. I have never done wine tasting, something I look forward to doing in the future after this informative session. Thank you, Mr. Doug and the VUGA team.
Hey.
Thank you so much for tuning in. And then I see we have some of those comments, for, Sanelisiwe Mgoduga,
His
people
birthday,
wishing her a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Sanelisiwe, from Zanobuhle Makoba, Nontobeko Masina, patiently waiting for Sanelisiwe Mgoduga
To come
Nokolo
through.
Murendi. Happy birthday, Sanelisiwe Mgoduga.
And then there's another one. Gamokhetu is saying that, Mr. Daga, I wish you brought a nice bottle of Bayer's Cloth Pinotage because it's a favor. Please leave a one. I have a corkscrew. So this is someone who clearly consumes wine much better than myself and more. So, but if you're wondering who Mr. Doug Cresswell is, he's someone who is the co-founder of Val di Terra wines that are originally produced right here in South Africa. And this is a business that he started with his wife and a close friend of yours, right,
Yes,
Mr. Dag?
correct.
This is about 7, 6, 8 years ago, if so. And he's been getting into the story of how he got into the business and the differences between the different kinds of wines and the brands and all things that go into that space. But for now, he will be sharing a bit more about the event that will be coming up very soon.
Festival.
The Benvino Wine Festival. Take us through, Mr. Dag.
Thanks very much.
What is the Benvino Festival? When is it happening? And what is the purpose of the Benvino Festival?
Thank you. If you don't mind, Missy, I just wanted to
Sure, absolutely.
comment on a South African thing. It would be remiss of me, which is a conundrum.
Yeah.
So, not to mention Pinotage, and the lady mentioned Pinotage, very appropriate, and thank you. Actually, you've reminded me about something. The most famous wine worldwide, perhaps in South Africa, that's ever been grown is Beierskloof Pinotage.
Oh, wow.
And that is because in the 1970s, it is the only wine ever in South Africa. Well, sorry, in South Africa's history to win the World Wine of the Year. Not the World Chenin or the World Cabernet Sauvignon or the World Rosé, the World Wine.
Wine of the year.
The best wine in the world, okay, was 1972 Beierskloof Pinotage.
Oh, wow.
Now, what is special about Pinotage, we also do a Pinotage. I brought a bottle along here today. And guys, I'm going to leave all of this here for you. So I don't know what you're going to be doing with it, but there's a bottle of Pinotage, a bottle of Cabernet
it's 5 p.m.
Sauvignon,
somewhere in the world.
and a half a bottle of Merlot now.
Yeah.
Pinotage is a very famous South African varietal. It's the only one that we can claim fame with. And the reason for that is in the 1920s, a South African professor in the University of Cape Town The profession is called a horticulturalist, which is somebody who grows plants and specializes in plants and trees and whatever. Took 2 different vines. Okay, one grape was a grape called a Pinot Noir, which is a red grape.
Yes,
and the other grape vine was called a Hermitage, which is the same today as Shiraz. Okay, but anyway, it was called a Hermitage grape. He took the 2 flowers or 2 plants, not the 2 grapes. He took the plants and he put them together. It's a process called grafting.
Okay.
Where you put the 2 plants together, you cut them, and then you tape them together. Oh. And that produced a separate grape. Okay. And they tasted that grape and they made wine out of it. Wow. And it was a fantastic product. So it was invented. And they took the name from Pinot Noir. They took the Pinot from Pinot Noir, and they took the Taj from Hermitage and created Pinotage.
Oh, okay? Wow.
So it's very famous. If you grow Pinotage, and lots of countries outside South Africa grow Pinotage, but they have to pay a license fee to South Africa because we own it.
So
and it's one of the most popular wines in the world.
So it's originally a South African thing.
Yes.
Wow.
Correct.
More
so
that deserves
fantastic. That's real special. Support South Africa and support Pinotage and support our Pinotage. It's excellent. This is it's a little bit fruity. So it tastes not sweet, but tastes fruity. It's very nice and smooth.
Yeah.
So that's Pinotage. Then for me to get on to, because I'm afraid, guys, I have
the Benvino, like you mentioned. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for mentioning that. Benvino stands for Benoni, Ben, and vino in Italian means wine. So Benvino.
Oh.
So it's the Benvino Wine Festival. It's
the Benoni Wine
Palace.
Festival.
Yes.
Basically, yes, sir.
At the casino, a massive venue at about 1,000 people will be there. It's $275 a ticket, and what happens is you can buy the tickets online at Ticket Pro. All you need to do is, in fact, we can supply you with the link.
Yes, definitely.
We'll supply you with the link, but you can also just go into Ticket Pro on Google and Google Benvino. Okay, and for that you get the entrance. You get your tasting glass, which is the glasses we've been using here. They're branded Benvino. And you get then to walk around. You beautiful seating. There's a band there. There's also food vendors. There's where you can buy food, etc. There's different types of food, etc. that you can buy. You can buy cheeses there, which go very well with wine. And you can walk around from 10 o'clock in the morning until, as long as you can walk, until 5 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah.
Enjoy, relax, eat, drink, and taste as much wine as you like for that price.
Yeah.
There are some wines there that actually literally sell. You will taste stuff that sell for 300-400 rand a bottle. Others sell for, like ours do, for 80 to 100 rand a bottle. And you can both buy wine there on the day to consume. If you want to buy a bottle there, you can buy it. You don't pay the prices that you pay in restaurants or hotels, so you pay the retail price. And then Emperors will also have things like beer on tap and whatever, which you buy at their prices. So it'll be a hell of an exciting day. If you want to learn about something about wine, every wine stall has a promoter. They tell you about the farm. They tell you about the wine. They tell you what the retail price is, and you can buy wine in cases after that as well that can either be delivered to you or you can collect it.
Yeah.
So that's the whole picture. And that one, the next one after that, we'll be having an advertising also in the winter one, which is going to be in July at a different venue. Okay, but that's Benvino.
Yeah. Happening on the 5th of April.
Saturday, the 5th of April.
From 10 to 5
p.m.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Very cool stuff. It sounds like it promises to be like a good time, man.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I can imagine like having a band, vendors there, good wine, good company. Yeah, man.
Good
it sounds like a vibe.
also.
Sounds like a vibe. Yeah.
But Mr. Doug, thank you so much for coming right here at the
much.
Vuga Breakfast Show. It was nice having you. And also, I wish that we can have you after the wine festival
to find out how it would have went. Yes,
You're very welcome.
Of course.
I'll gladly come through again.
Yes.